Perfect. All right, thanks everybody for joining. We're really excited to share this session with you. Reimagining IT from a cost center to an innovative product build partner. I'm Kaylee Siegel. My job title is in the middle there. It says Head of America's Innovation and Transformation Delivery. But really what that means is I'm a professional brainstormer with Amazon's Toolbox, and I have two of my collaborators here as well.
Absolutely.
Fatima?
Hi everyone. My name is Fatima Howes. I am the VP of Product and Design at Bridgestone for our fleet management solution. So today we're pretty excited to show you kind of the examples of all the things that accumulate with the work that we've done.
Awesome, and I'm Ben McKeel. You can tell I've been in the desert for a few days because my voice is kind of hurting, but we'll get through it together. I think maybe we'll fix it with Gen AI on the back end. Somebody can make me sound, French and like I haven't been at the penny slots for the last 72 hours. I work also in innovation transformation programs, just like Kaylee. I do a lot of the same work, only not as well and not as good cheer as Kaylee. But we have a lot of fun together, and we're looking forward to talking to you about this topic that I think all of us hold near and dear and are quite passionate about. So let's get into it.
Absolutely.
I'll get us started, and then we'll go back to my fine colleagues over here in a second. All right. So first, just to get a sense of kind of who's in the crowd, can you raise your hand if you are an engineer or work in an engineering organization? Okay, about half of you, cool. Now raise your hand, and maybe you can raise your hand twice if you want, if you work in kind of a product function. Okay, cool. And then what about like UX, customer experience-ish? If you're like, maybe. Good, welcome. And finally, what about other kind of support functions, maybe analytics, operations, things of that nature? Awesome. Well, I'm really glad you all are here. One more quick poll. First, I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. So I'm just going to spend 5 or 10 minutes just to level set us on like what are we talking about. I see clapping. I love clapping. That's good. We're going to talk a little bit about like our Amazon's enterprise-wide product management approach. This is not to say that this is the only way to do things or even the best way to do things. It's just the way that we do it. And one of the things I love about product management is it's not a settled science, right? It's not physics, like reasonable people can agree to disagree, but it is important to have an approach. Then Kaylee's going to walk us through how Amazon innovates and kind of our test and learn approach and working backwards from the customer, all that kind of good stuff. And finally, Fatima is going to walk us through what she really did with the customer as a customer to drive some delightful results there as well. All right, one more poll question just for everybody. Raise your hand if you are part of a team that in the last 3 years has gone through something with the word transformation in it. Digital transformation, agile transformation, customer something. Okay, keep your hands up. Okay, keep your hands raised if you are seeing the results that you expected to see from that transformation. All right. So the good news is Kaylee and I will still be employed for quite some time because we think we can help you with this, but it's hard to do. So a couple of things before we get into it. So first of all, every time I show a picture of Jeff, I get $1, so thank you for supporting that. I also have the corporate haircut, so I'm kind of winning twice. So when you think about our product management approach, it doesn't sit off on a silo off by itself. It really sits on top of our culture of innovation that is common among every single Amazon business unit, right? And we anchor our approach on customers and customer needs. This comes from a shareholder letter from 2016. The reason we do that is because customers are always beautifully, wonderfully dissatisfied, right? It's sort of an evergreen kind of a motivation to delight and inspire and try to solve problems for our customers. There are other ways to innovate and to do product, like heavily technology forward, business model innovation, financial engineering, look at my competitor and copy what they do. And I'm not here to pass judgment on any of those things, but I am here to say that our product management approach uniformly and only works backwards from customers all the time. The second thing that we do is we focus a lot on building flywheels, growth flywheels for each of our businesses. So when you're in innovation or you're in product management, it is very, very tempting to sort of think about the future. Like, 15 years from now, how is AI going to change all these things and what's going to be different? And like, that's cool and fun, and we do that too. But we actually do the opposite much more often, and we focus on what we think of as durable needs. So what is not going to change 15 years from now that's going to be critical for us to delight our customers? So for our retail business, that's price, selection, and convenience. No customer is ever going to come to us and say, I love you, Amazon, but please make everything a bit more expensive or make it harder to buy or have fewer things. It's just not ever going to happen. So when we're innovating and we're doing product management, we're not doing it into nothing. Like, we're not testing and learning into a bunch of different things. We are purposely testing and learning into these durable needs, which we know are not going to change over time. All right, so there's kind of 3 buckets, and again, this is a super speed round because it's a big topic and we have a lot of interesting things to talk about today. If you find this topic interesting, feel free to reach out to your account manager. You can also feel directly to reach out to me. I facilitate much longer sessions on this topic if it's something that's of interest to you. So broadly in 3 buckets, the first piece we'll talk about is how do we think about products, like what's a product? Secondly is how we organize against that, and lastly, it's how do we innovate for speed. Raise your hand if you're a Prime customer, just out of curiosity. Awesome, thank you for your business. Normally I would ask you why you're a Prime customer, but with this funny setup, it's a little bit tricky. So I'm gonna assume you're gonna say things like fast shipping, free shipping, ability to see where my stuff is, ability to watch Thursday Night Football, things of that nature, right? So I love to show Prime as an example of Amazon product innovation for a couple of reasons. Number one is, one of the things that well-meaning executives will ask you for all the time is roadmaps. And roadmaps are helpful. Like, I'm not here to really talk down on roadmaps, but it is really dangerous to be too prescriptive and too specific too far into the future. So the way we think about it at Amazon is we say we want to be stubborn on the vision and flexible on the details. You never want to end up in a position where you're the reverse, where you're flexible on the vision and you're stubborn on the details, right? So think about it, you're a product manager at Prime in the year 2000, you just came out with Super Saver shipping free over orders over $100. By the way, this was 5 to 8 days, which was like very forward thinking at the time, right? So another illustration of like customer experience and customer expectations are only going one direction, right? There's no way that you would have known in the year 2015, people were gonna start watching other people play video games online in a service called Twitch, and that would be really valuable for you. There's no way you would have known that in the year 2000. But you had to stay open-minded long enough to incorporate those things by listening to your customers and inventing on their behalf, right? So like the way Jeff talks about it is, we want to make Prime such a good value for you that it would be irresponsible for you not to buy it. And so that in a nutshell is the power of what I think about as having a product operating model versus a project-focused operating model. Kaylee's going to talk about this a bit, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but sometimes we get the question of like, well, why? Like, what is better about it? And again, there are different ways to do it, so I'm not saying this is the only way, but for us, this is why we care about this. So for us, product teams mean we make faster decisions. Speed is a really important element of our culture, high quality decisions, like high quality, high velocity decisions. Lots of companies are good at making high quality decisions. Very few are good at making high quality, high velocity decisions, and we think speed matters in business, right? So product teams mean faster decisions. Those decisions allow for more experimentation and iteration. That means we get smarter about what our customers need faster than anybody else, or at least we try to. That knowledge informs differentiated products. And at the end of that differentiation creates business value. So what did we not start with? We did not start with, why is this good for Amazon? What's the ROI? Like, what's the gross margin I'm trying to hit? We ask those questions, but it's not early in the process. It's much, much later. Another way of looking at this, why product over project, and I would say ask yourself where you are on the spectrum. Sort of traditionally, you would have this thing called the business, and I'm still trying to figure out what the hell that means, because if you're in technology, you are the business as well. There's no special business department, right? But traditionally, the business would focus on things like ROI, which sometimes would mean like a really, really long business case where they tried to specify features coming 5 years from now in incredible, exquisite detail. They throw that over the fence to the technology organization. The technology organization creates a project out of it, and their success metrics are on time, on budget, on scope. I do not want to admit to you, but I will because this feels like a safe space, right? The number of projects that I've seen that were launched actually drove none of the customer or business outcomes that you would have wanted them to, but because they were on time, on budget, and on scope, we just kept them right on rolling. This isn't at Amazon, this is in a past life and with other customers that I've seen, but that's the danger of it, right? So it's really outcomes over outputs. So we try to get closer to the model on the right. Thank you. To the model on the right, which is business and technology are working together. Business is a little bit more domain experts, or a little bit more focused on the customer, but they don't own the customer. Everybody has to think about the customer. And then the technology experts are a little more focused on speed and the agility and the how. That comes together in a product, and all we care about is accelerated customer outcomes. So that's the basic mental model of how we're trying to operate. I'm not going to beat two pizza teams to death, but two pizza teams are really important. So small, cross-functional teams that kind of own a product from soup to nuts. A lot of people think that this is like the cool thing to do because startups do it, which like fine. But the real reason this works, there's a couple reasons this really works so well, but my favorite one is the communication overhead. The communication overhead that is created by larger teams, right? The math works out. Those of you who are mathematically inclined can do the math. 6 people have 15 unique nodes of communication amongst themselves. If you double that from 6 to 12, you don't double the nodes, you multiply them by like 6, you end up with like 66 nodes of communication. And if you go to like a small team of 50 people or so, you're over 1,200. No team can do that organically, so what you end up with is a lot of overhead and communication and like meetings about meetings and status updates and things of that nature. All right, so what do these teams actually look like? So let me make it real for you. This is an illustrated example of a Amazon.com digital widget team. So somebody who owns the, promotion cartridge on the .com homepage, right? So the basic structure of all of our teams is kind of the same, no matter what domain you're in. For this example, we have a product manager. We don't have product owners, by the way. Like a lot of companies have this this division between product manager, who's like the strategy person, and product owner, who's like the Jira person, I guess. I don't know, but like we don't believe in that artificial distinction between strategy and operations and development. So we just have that one product manager role. In this case, there's a UX designer who's in there, and then you have specific technical experts that have the requisite skills to be able to engineer in that environment. If you change the team to be a team more focused on machine learning, like an internal a team that builds machine learning algorithms for consumption by some of those widget teams, I barely changed anything about the slide, right? That's the only thing that changed about the slide, other than some of the descriptions. The framework is the same. There's still a product manager. Instead of a UX designer, you've got a research scientist. Instead of a front-end dev, you've got a data scientist, data engineer, ML platform, and so on and so forth. All right. Last piece, we've got we've got our products broken down kind of from soup to nuts. We've got our teams kind of cross-functionally working together for a very specific customer purpose under a single threaded owner. Now, how do we figure out what we actually want to work on? And the last part of it really is for us is working backwards. So working backwards is our mechanism for innovation. There is no other mechanism for innovation at Amazon. Like if you want to build something, whether it's small, medium, large, or extra large, this is where you start. There's no other way. So we're a heavily narrative-driven culture. We read a lot of documents, and these documents are very important in the overall product management lifecycle at our company. Not surprisingly, we start from the customer and work backwards. There are 3 components to this, and it's really important to understand that this package is not us kind of like reverse engineering what we already wanted to do. It's really starting back at the customer and asking the right questions. So before we sit down and write these documents that I'll talk about, we ask what we call the 5 customer questions. And in addition to being like maybe a little bit provocative or be inspirational, I actually have the goal as well to give you a couple of things you can do tactically to kind of try out tomorrow. And this is one of those things. The next time somebody asks you to build something, just ask them the first question. Forget about the rest. Just the first question. Who's the customer and what insights do we have about them? If they can't answer that question, don't build the thing. And almost without fail, the degree to which they can answer that question, like the fidelity of their answer, is my experience is very directly correlated to how well they've thought through the problem and how good their idea probably is. So before we sit down and write the documents, we try to answer these 5 questions. And if we can't answer them, we go get the information to try to answer them. And sometimes after we answer those questions, we decide that, you know what, we're not as excited about this idea as we thought. Let's go try something else. So it's like a very frugal way of innovating. We don't build a bunch of stuff and then throw over the fence and then ask the marketing department to write a press release about it, right? We actually start with the press release. So that can be super helpful in that way. All right, so then what are these documents? So there's a press release, an FAQ, and a visual. Press release is simply a 1-page document. It talks about who the customer is, what's their pain point, what's the solution, what's the customer experience. It has a leader quote, it has a customer quote, and a call to action, all in 1 page. This is really hard, right? Like, you know that quote, I think it's Hemingway, like I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one. That's this in a nutshell. It really forces you to have a discussion as a team and iterate on what is it you're trying to do and why before you write a single line of code. All those other things like ROI, who's going to build it, why is this good for us, how does this fit into our strategic roadmap, what technology are we going to use? We care about those things, but if you ask those questions too early, you are going to kill your innovation immediately. Your idea will never get beyond like some very basic stuff. So all that stuff goes in the FAQs, which sort of functions as a de facto product backlog at that stage. So there's a customer FAQ, and you've defined the customer. You'd be shocked at the number of things people build where they never actually clearly define who the customer is. It's a little bit scary. So the customer side is, how do I use this? Where do I go if I have trouble? What's it cost? How does this fit in with the other things you do for me? Anybody who's not the customer goes in the stakeholder FAQs, which is, how is this different from that thing we did last summer? Pardon. What's the ROI? What technology we're going to use? That kind of stuff. And then the last part is the visual. The visual is just a low fidelity picture of the customer experience. It's not a wireframe. And then the last part, we iterate a lot. We go through, we revise and we revise in order to make our idea better and better. So I'm actually going to use this opportunity to bring Kaylee up here because I'm about to lose my voice, but I'm at the end of my discussion. And she's going to talk to you about how we actually make this real and some of the more specifics of how we actually get there.
Awesome. So yeah, I think about the PR FAQ actually as the world's cheapest prototype, because you can go through those 5 questions. You can sit alone at your desk or in that small 2-pizza team group and you can say, this is amazing. We have something here. We can share this with our leadership. We can share this with our users. They can red pen it, or they can give you a high five, and you're then able to move forward. So when you think about it, it's like the fidelity of the output actually matches the fidelity of the thinking. And then as you bring other folks along the journey, they will essentially harden that document for you as it becomes more of what looks like a traditional product requirements document, saying, okay, we are ready to convert this into a thing, or you know what, we're going to cease, we're not going to scale, and here's why. So to get that kind of early stage gut reaction, the blend of both anecdotes and data as it surrounds the PR FAQ is incredibly important. So when we think about this, kind of wrap it all together, our general approach is start with the customer and work backwards. Envision the world as products, and I have another great slide coming up to kind of help everyone think about all the different product experiences that are embedded in something we all know and love, the Amazon.com homepage. Organize with those product teams. So, we call it a 2-pizza team. I couldn't hear Ben perfectly, but, we joke, is it a Midwestern pizza with a thick crust, or is this New York thin? It's that small enough type team, 5 to 8 or so people that are thoughtfully cross-functional based on what you want to do and what you want to build. We bring together those teams that work, and then we reduce the risk through iteration. You want to build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. Don't spend a ton of time investing on things that are generally recognized as safe. You don't need to reinvent the single sign-on experience, but we have never done something for top of funnel management for things that are high value. Like, we do need to iterate. We do need to test in those areas. So trying to align your resources against your riskiest assumptions, super, super important, and helps you move faster. And then you own the entire life cycle. Like Ben had mentioned, this is not a blue sky group. Yes, we have innovation in our title, but it's not like, oh, here's my big idea and I throw it over the wall for those people to actually run. No, the reality is that responsible innovation means, like, this is a great idea. We did kind of go from concept through to clickable, through to code, or press release to production, whatever moniker you want to use to be able to articulate that life cycle within your organization. We do all of this for 2 simple reasons. We want to accelerate your time to know. This is a great idea. This is going to crush the market. Or no, this is bad. Nobody likes it. Customers aren't interested. It's duplicative. Whatever those reasons are, again, within your ecosystem, accelerating your time to know is super, super important. So when we think about bringing those concepts together, to harken back to Ben's slides, like, product teams, as they work, make better, faster decisions together. It helps you articulate and differentiate your business value, and really does help you get to know your customer better by developing that deep sense of empathy. Fundamentally, if you start with your customer first and then be able to take those many different ideas, run them through that experimentation loops, learn from those, and then make data-driven decisions based on the signal you receive from that product development. Whether you're launching a prototype and you just need a little inkling of those KPIs, or indeed you've gone for a full-scale launch and you really have, lovely, robust trend lines for 8,000 users, have at it. But you can also do that, with 10 or 12. And after you get to that point, you are then ready to scale and use those usage patterns to define the future of your roadmap. Don't come to me. We were just joking at this in our prep. We don't actually want to see a 10-year roadmap. We want to see a 10-year roadmap that's about durable needs. Mobility is not going away, or transactions are not going away, but you don't know exactly what those things are going to be made up of in 5 or 10 years. So being ready to scale based on those durable customer needs is super, super important. So fundamentally, when you apply this product-driven operating model, you see it in different ways. And we had the great example of the evolution of Prime as a product, as an experience, or as a brand. We've done similar things with our devices. We've done things like Amazon Connect, which is a product experience that we created to serve our customers from the Amazon.com side that was somewhat recently externalized to become a robust product experience for you, our external customers, or whether you're seeing it in a reimagined retail experience like Amazon Go. We also have internal products, programs, et cetera, that will then serve as those product experiences as well, whether that's your and-on cord mechanism able to stop the production line at any point, hearkening back to our friends at Toyota, or things like Amazon Heartbeat, which helps us deeply understand our customer sentiment based on, what we're hearing, feeling, and seeing in the market like that. So as you think about decoupling components and product development in those iterative small two-pizza teams, we like to think about the products as those kind of standalone components. My background is in toy product development before AWS, so I often use the Lego blocks analogy. So this is just the Amazon.com homepage, and for all of us, since this is not a fully interactive session, who's bought something on Amazon, right? Okay, pretty much everybody, awesome. And your homepage probably looks somewhat like this, but maybe you have kids, maybe you have a dog, maybe you live in an area where it takes a long time to ship something. Maybe you have different tax rules. Your homepage is hyper customized to you, your family, your profile, your buying patterns. So how many product teams do you think there are on this page? And since we can't quite do this, is there 5? Is there 50? Okay, I'm seeing a 20. He says 10. He says 5. Okay. So decoupling that, you can begin to think of it in this way. A marketplace platform widgets are products too. So here you see the adaptive homepage as an experience, but you also see cart, navigation, search, promotions, content cartridge. It could be discounting, it could be recommendations, etc. We could say, oh, you bought shoes last week. You might want shoe polish or socks or laces, perhaps. We begin to understand and customize that experience, for you. And if I am the product owner for Amazon Cart, and you are the product owner for discounting, we can iterate in our own product experiences, follow the API best practices guidelines, and I can experiment in my area and it won't break the system. You can experiment in your area, it also won't break the system, and we can iterate, as an organism of kind of those decoupled teams as well. And it keeps getting deeper. There are teams as it relates to account profile, digital asset management, SKUs, advertising, etc. So double-clicking further and further into those product teams, spoiler alert, there's hundreds. Nobody put the right amount of product teams up. Maybe everybody combined, but, and it fluctuates as well. So as we think about this marketplace type approach, these multiple product teams living and breathing and working together synchronously and asynchronously, how do companies go from being that project to product model, as Ben has discussed, but also then, and why Fatima's here, how do we really then think about going from that transformation of being a company that is inherently tied to the production and sale of physical goods only to something that's more digital? And this is where it kind of ties back into the title of this presentation. This is not help desk IT. This is not the IT that resets my password or connect to the printer or fix your O365 licensing issues. This is builder IT. And the mental model shift that I'm encouraging everyone to make, especially if you're in kind of these diversified industries, we would call it sometimes phygital, physical and digital, is to really think about reimagining your team. Cloud engineering is as important as your mechanical engineering, if indeed you are in those industries. And thinking about it as, if you're in the service of creating automobiles, of course, like the people who are your mechanical engineers reimagining your transmissions, very, very important. It's very understood what those job roles are and how robust those systems need to be designed. But if you want to add a layer of digital intelligence on top of your physical products and have your digital products be as robust, maybe even better, than your physical products, you need to think about those cloud engineers in that way. They are builders. And I love thinking about it, from that background in robotics and physical product development. That iteration is only really available on the digital side in the robust way. So if there's one takeaway from my slides, I would encourage everyone to think about it in this manner of IT as a place that is not just a cost center. This is an area for accretive growth, for building out businesses and net new value for your customers, as opposed to that cost center only. And make sure that you really are maintaining kind of that optimistic entrepreneurial view to see the art of the possible, look around corners on your customers' behalf. So when we think about working with our external customers, it's kind of this two-part goal. How do we help you think bigger and build faster? This is not just the think big side, not the blue sky group that gets shut down after 18 months. Ask me how I know. But it's also not just your hands-on keyboard, build exactly what I say and don't ask questions. We do it in this specific process, like Ben had mentioned, working backwards. This is the way Amazon innovates. There's a number of great ways to innovate. We're not going to claim to be the best or the only. This is just how we do it and what we know. So we follow this very specific Amazonian process. It's the gig that we do internally to create our own products and services, but also it's our entire job to externalize that with customers. So following this Amazonian process, very, very important for us. The next thing is we get our hands dirty, literally and figuratively. There's only one great way to develop customer empathy is walk a mile in their shoes or stalk them in the call center and see how many systems they need to bring together, or understand in a patient support services journey, why is it so confusing for decision support to be able to happen? Like, you need to know the why behind the ask, and then you can do a much better job at articulating your product, your service, and move from there. And then the last part is we test and build minimum lovable products, MLP. That might sound a little different from something more traditional of MVP, viability versus lovability. We anchor on lovability because these are the features that really should move the needle. Again, viability, great, it works, it functions. That is kind of the old school mentality where if it's delightful, you can use it, you will gain signal and understand how to double down on that experience to be able to drive, value. So bringing these pieces together, I'm going to make the transition in a unique way about how we can talk about Bridgestone tires. So I've worked with them for about 4 years on and off on a variety of different products. I work at AWS, but I am a total gearhead, so I was instantly drawn to this brand. I happened to buy Bridgestone tires for my dirt bike and my car, and I always love figuring out, what are companies doing to really grow and build beyond just that tire and rubber business. That is something that is incredibly competitive and in some ways definitely physically differentiated, but in other ways, they are still looking for great ways to connect with their customers and unlock value. So they kind of came to me in a variety of ways, how do we go from a tire provider to a tire manufacturer to a mobility solutions provider? And I've had similar conversations, say with energy companies, that it's like, how do we go from an oil and gas refining company to an energy provider that then can open up the aperture and say, well, of course we can do solar. We can definitely do wind. We can also do natural gas, and we can do biofuels. So in collaborating with Bridgestone across a number of different projects, like, I just got super pumped because they're doing, and we got to work together on all kinds of really interesting things that you would not expect from a tire manufacturer. So in 2022, we had our strategic relationship formed that had a number of different initiatives underneath this large umbrella. They became the first company in their industry to launch a product on AWS Marketplace. So very interesting, kind of in the spirit of digital transformation. Like, wow, fleet management software on the AWS Marketplace from a tire manufacturer? That's pretty radical. We worked with them on their developer garage, which was an interesting initiative to say, I love the kind of cheeky branding in that way. Like, what are the types of APIs that this company should and with efficacy provide to their customers, and what is the way that they might like to consume them, whether that's a fleet services provider or an OEM vehicle manufacturer. And then we also worked with them to launch their last mile marketplace. So this is just kind of a smorgasbord of those initiatives, and thinking about this little fires everywhere type strategy, what we would almost call an innovation-led transformation, is there's a lot of really interesting things going on. And that then brings me to invite my friend Fatima up here to talk about Bridgestone's journey from being that tire manufacturer into being a mobility services provider.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Absolutely. The art of the possible. That's what we're talking about today. When we first looked at all the different things that we can do, we really needed to understand our customers first. I come from a startup background, if you will, but getting launched into the Bridgestone arena was really exciting and challenging, given the scale of the company as well as the scale of the vision, which I think is honestly speaks highly to what we've done and really kind of the cornerstone and the fuel of what we've been able to accomplish. But I wanted to kind of pause real quick because I know I've had this personal experience. How many of you, just a quick poll, today work at software native companies, where you're selling the softwares, your main services, okay? All right, and how many of you are kind of on the non-native, maybe software enabled, right, traditional side of the business? Fantastic. Just one more poll, how many of you are product managers or product developers within your organizations? Fantastic, fantastic, welcome to the chaos. So yeah, our partnership really was about how do we find customer value that kind of starts to intersect between tire services, maintenance services, and fleet management services. And as I represent Azuga, it sits at the center of a lot of what we can bring to the forefront of our customers through digital experiences, but not forgetting the physical. So I wanted to kind of contextualize it a bit as well as I get into the examples of what we were able to accomplish. Right, Bridgestone is 100-year-old, almost 100-year-old company. It's gone through multiple iterations. Started as a tire business only, right? Going into Firestone retail stores. If you folks ever have had your vehicle serviced at a Firestone, that's a Bridgestone store as well. And this is global. It's not just for North America, although that's our focus, but it's a very much a global service. And then going into 2020, where we started to look into the future of what we call Bridgestone 3.0, which really focuses on how do we pivot into a solutions business rather than just a tire and maintenance services business. And that's where we come in really from this kind of bridge system. And I think that's a really important kind of decision that has to be made organizationally, is like, where is that anchor that you're gonna have as you look into your transformation? And for us, that was mobility. So I like to start here because, product vision is always where we need to kind of work backwards from there. It's really important for us, and it was really important for us to have leadership alignment. As judging by the Bridgestone 3.0, we're really aligned across everyone in terms of what does it mean for us to transform and where does the customer exist in that, and kind of centralizing ourselves across that. That helps us at least create a foundation where we can start to earn the trust, right? Like earn our way into innovation and through these innovation processes. So we started, honestly, operationally, because at first, that's really what we had to look at, is are our teams aligned with our customer value across the board? And not just within fleet telematics, but across Bridgestone as a whole. And how do we organize ourselves to better serve those customers and describe them more refinedly? And so once we had that, we created what I think you folks already referred to as the pizza teams, but for us, it was cross-functional in a little bit of a different way. We had designers, we had product managers, we had tech leads, but we also have product councils, really pulling from the kind of industry and institutional knowledge that is living and breathing across our sister partners and companies across Bridgestone. So it was really important for us, again, to understand and define and document these personas and a clear job to be done. For those of you in product, you probably have heard this before, but it was really about scoping the jobs to be done for these teams, right? Because sometimes in innovation, we can come in and it's like, do everything, or where do I end and someone else starts, right? So it was really important for us to focus these teams with the core always being true, which is that there is product, there is design representation, and there is engineering representation in equal parts across all of these teams. The other challenge, again, coming into a more traditional setting, was to separate problems from solutions. It was really easy for us when we thought about an idea to jump straight into a solution. Oh, well, we could do this, we can invest millions of dollars in that, but rather spending more time in the problem space with these teams and saying, what really are we trying to do, and what's the scope of that problem for the customer? And what is the ROI, not for us, but for the customer, that they need to see for this to be validated for them as, yes, it's working for me. Because we can leverage that in the stakeholder discussions when we talk about solutions, right? So really helping kind of change the culture through showing that problem space prioritization versus just the solution space, which can feel easy, although, as many of us know, it's very, very complicated and challenging. So user experience became a really critical part of this, is leading with more what we say solutions, but it's more about the end-to-end customer experience. We even kind of pivoted out of just saying user experience to customer design experience, because we're no longer designing a digital product. We're designing a physical experience that can manifest in the digital setting and then back again in a physical setting. And so it was really important for us to start to map the problem space through the view of those interactions with the services, with the products, as well as with the physical spaces that they may visit, such as a retail store where they're dropping off their vehicle. So that led us down the next path, right? Which is really looking at customer behavior. And I emphasize behavior over just customer data, right? So looking at, okay, what are we seeing across our customer fleets, both in our own segments as well as outside? So a couple examples here that I'll walk you through how those kind of manifested into the projects that we ended up releasing. But observed behavior for us really had three things. We looked at what are the experiences between offerings and vehicle services? How can we leverage the vehicle data to help the customer make decisions about their maintenance services and be more predictive? Looking at getting quicker access to information and exploring this information in a central platform, right? How do I get this data to be less mystical for me, right? There's a lot of it when you're talking about telemetry from a vehicle, from a camera, from a trailer, right? There's a lot of data coming in. How do I make sense of it as a fleet manager? I don't know how to do that. And then last but not least, how do I know that the investment I'm making in you folks, whether it's your digital products or your maintenance services, how do I know that's bringing ROI to my business, right? As a customer specifically. So those were the behaviors we've observed and kind of created the solution opportunities out of those. So back to the best way is to have kind of a mapping, right? Like an image way to understand the customer. So we kind of looked at the ecosystem, both of our business, and say, here are all the things we offer, right? And how is that juxtapositioned with what the customer is experiencing in the field as they're going through their ecosystem? Whether it's when they're trying to improve comfort and safety, they're looking at convenience, for both their drivers and their fleets. They're trying to tackle the labor shortage on the driver's side. They're trying to champion road safety, literally teach people why safety is important. these are the challenges that our customers are experiencing. And so it's important for us to kind of build everything back to this, right? And so we mapped it out to ensure that our objectives are at the forefront of what we're building. And then we said, we know when it comes to solutions, we need some scope management, some principles to help us out. And how can we create some simple ways to think about when we're building, how we're building? And we looked at, and some of these are very familiar, but for us it was really important to document them and kind of live them out. Feasibility, can we build on core operational strengths? Can we not go and do something brand new? We have a lot of strengths internally. Where can we leverage that? Scalable, we're a massive company, right? So we need things to be able to scale to massive customers who have worldwide fleets. Viability, a solution that solves really the unit economics for profitable growth. We cannot veer away from that. We still have to make these the business cases for our solutions. And to the MLP discussion, desirability, a solution that solves a real customer pain back to the map that we mapped out for our customers' ROI. And so what did that look like? Well, our first successful project, which we launched in our platform, is end-to-end scheduling for all fleets and drivers. So as a fleet is managing their operations in our platform, they're getting all this telemetry on their diagnostics. They're getting behavior and how the driver is driving the vehicle, the wear and tear that might have on the tires, on the vehicle itself. And so we can translate all those things into actionability to the physical space, right? To say, hey, now you can have a direct capability to go into the store and to get your stuff serviced in a convenient manner. And that really bridged the value proposition of this project out of this kind of IT enablement to, no, this is an offering we can bring forward in front of our drivers, in front of our admins, fleet admins, and have a direct ROI to their business. Because now the maintenance folks don't have to manage these manually. Their technicians don't have to go and check to make sure, oh, do we need the oil service change? It's something that they can manage at scale. So it really aligned not only with our goals in terms of desirability and ease of use, but it also aligned with our customers' goals in terms of convenience and serviceability. And all this powered through many of the components that worked through with the AWS team across the business. So it's not just Azuga, it's a lot of different teams behind this. If I were to have an overlay over this, it would have to be 5 or 6 teams that are outside of just the fleet management side that helped us bring this to life. The next project we are experimenting with is Gen AI, is really looking at, there's a lot of data about vehicles. There's a lot of information that if made simple, our customers can be able to quickly manage their vehicles, coach a driver that's driving and safely, reward a driver that's driving well, prevent an accident through that coachability, or even at least understand the risk of a possible. So we started to experiment with some of the architecture, and some of it went well, others did not, but ultimately we got to a really good place where we can understand how does the customer want to interact with this data so that it's familiar to them. And we're not taking them out of their context every day, but we're bringing more innovation to familiarity. And last but not least is really about the ROI side, right? So how do you become a solutions partner to customers? How do you make sure that to say, hey, your investment in these, for us, projects, but for the business, services and products and solutions can benefit you in a way that's beyond your utilization, can help you create sustainability in your business, because we know from idling, your impact on CO2 emissions. How do we educate you on risk factors that we're seeing across your fleet? How do we help you kind of increase the reward programming of better and safer driver behavior? How can we allow you to see the benefits or the cost savings from your camera solutions that you've implemented with us, right? So these are all of the things that we come prepared for with our customers through things like QBRs, but really bringing it together so that we're telling them, hey, we're a partner in these solution businesses. We're not just a vendor that you leverage and deploy, and we hope you stay with us. And so that's been a really important piece of how we've partnered with the various components to bring these kind of projects to life. So in closing, and I know I stand between you folks and maybe some dinner and drinks, so in closing, it's really, where we found success is ensuring that we establish and refine our own product deployment operating model. That is so critical. Keeping it simple, making sure that you're separating that problem space so that you're having the right discussion with the stakeholders, especially from an executive sponsorship and a funding perspective. Codifying these innovation mechanisms and doing that through the customer methodology of how you understand your customer and their ROI. Launching, digital experiences that are focused, that are not grander, right? To create some trust and earn the right to continue to innovate. And connecting really the IT, and this was something very new, right? To go from IT to how do you bridge the business development into your IT, into the kind of customer-facing, revenue-facing teams and services. But honestly, at the end of the day, it's really is about starting small, showing quick success, especially success that people can understand, which I think is a really important goal there, and then scaling it. And with that, I thank you so much all for your time. I appreciate it.